Hi everyone, welcome to Module 4 of our Foundations of Distance Education course. We're going to begin our exploration of the key theories that have shaped this field. My name is Roland Marquez, and by the end of this presentation, we will have covered five key learning objectives: understanding why theory matters, discussing the concepts of independent study and learner autonomy, and explaining the influential theories of transactional distance and industrialized teaching. The importance of theory. Let's start with a fundamental question: why do we even need theory? Theory is essential because it provides a coherent and systematic ordering of ideas. It helps us explain, interpret, and shape our practice. Without theory, our actions in the classroom or in designing an online course would be random or based purely on instinct. Desmond Keegan in 1996 famously argued that a lack of accepted theory weakens a field. Theory gives us a touchstone, a reliable standard against which we can make confident decisions about methods, technology, and student support. In short, theory moves us from guessing to knowing. The need for a theoretical foundation. For a long time, distance education was seen as just a poor substitute for the real thing, the classroom. This is why a unique theoretical foundation was so critical. It helped establish distance education as a distinct and legitimate field of practice. Garrison noted that without this foundation, leaders often focus only on the physical implications, the cost savings, rather than the educational issues. This sparked a great debate. Is distance education fundamentally different from face to face education? Scholars like Otto Peters argued yes, stating they are strictly separable forms, while others argued that the core principles of education remain the same. This very debate is what drove the need for better theory. The concept of independent study. This brings us to our first major theorist, Charles Wedemeyer. In the 1960s and 70s, Wedemeyer was a true pioneer. He broke from the old model of correspondence study, which was mostly about logistics, and shifted the focus to the learner and learning process. He called this independent study. His definition was revolutionary for its time. He emphasized that teachers and learners carry out their tasks apart from one another, but the key goal wasn't just to overcome distance. It was to develop in every learner the capacity for self directed learning. This was a democratic ideal, making education accessible to anyone, anywhere. Characteristics of an independent study system. Wedemeyer wasn't just an idealist, he was a pragmatist. He outlined a system with clear characteristics to make this vision a reality. He believed the system should be able to operate anywhere, anytime. It should place greater responsibility on the student, offer wider choices in course, and most importantly, use all available teaching media effectively. The goal was to mix and match the methods to suit the individual learner, allowing them to start, stop, and learn at their own pace. This was truly a learner centered vision. Learner autonomy and independence. Building on Wedemeyer's foundation, Michael Moore introduced the critical concept of learner autonomy. He defined the autonomous learner as someone with the will and ability to exercise control over their own learning. Moore broke this down into three key events. First, establishment, setting your own goals. Second, executive, finding the resources and information you need. And third, evaluative, judging for yourself if you've learned successfully. An autonomous learner isn't an island. They will interact with teachers, but they use them as resources, not as directors. Learner autonomy versus independence. This creates a crucial distinction in a traditional teaching learning relationship. The learner is dependent. The teacher sets the goals, controls the process, and does the evaluating. But in an independent learning teaching relationship, the teacher's role shifts from director to helper or resource. The teacher is there to provide information and advice, but the learner retains overall control. It's the difference between being told what to do and being supported in what you've chosen to do. The concept of transactional distance. This leads us to perhaps the most influential theory in the field, Moore's theory of transactional distance. Now, this is a really important point. Distance here is not just about miles or kilometers. Moore took the idea of geography and transformed it into a pedagogical concept. He said there is a psychological and communications gap, a transactional distance that must be bridged. This gap is the space of potential misunderstanding between the teacher and the learner. Importantly, this distance is relative, not absolute. A course can have more or less of it, and the goal is to manage it effectively. The variables, dialogue, and structure. So, how do we manage transactional distance? Moore identified two key variables. The first is dialogue. This is not just any interaction, it's purposeful, constructive, and respectful exchange. The second is structure. This refers to the flexibility of the course design. A highly structured course with rigid deadlines and a fixed path offers less responsiveness to the individual. A less structured course allows for more learner choice and negotiation. The relationship between dialogue, structure, and distance. The relationship is straightforward. If you increase dialogue, you decrease transactional distance. If you increase structure, you increase transactional distance. The diagram on the slide visually shows this inverse relationship. A course with low dialogue and high structure is highly distant. A course with high dialogue and low structure has very low transactional distance. The role of learner autonomy. This brings in the third element of the theory, learner autonomy. The theory predicts that as transactional distance increases, meaning less dialogue and more structure, the learner has a greater need to exercise autonomy. A student in a highly structured, self paced correspondence course must be more autonomous than a student in a live, interactive, online seminar where the instructor is constantly present to guide them. Industrialized teaching and learning. Finally, we have Otto Peters' theory, which makes a very different perspective. Peters argued that distance education is a direct product of the industrial age. He contrasted it with the pre industrial craft of face to face teaching. In his view, the methods, structures, and even the values of distance education mirror those of an industrial factory. This was a radical idea, but it helps explain how large scale institutions can educate tens of thousands of students. Parallels between industry and distance education. Peters identified clear parallels. Think about division of labor. In a factory, different workers do different tasks. In a distance education system, the teacher's role is divided among course authors, instructional designers, tutors, and counselors. Think about mass production and standardization. Just like a factory produces thousands of identical cars, An open university produces thousands of standardized course packages. This is what made distance education efficient and scalable. The post industrial shift. But Peters himself, writing decades ago, asked if a post industrial era was emerging. This brings us full circle to Garrison's argument. In the 21st century, the focus is shifting from the structural constraints of industrialization to the transactional issues of teaching and learning. New technologies are making dialogue and collaboration easier, moving us from a model of independent learners to the one of independent learning communities. Summary and key takeaways. So, to summarize, theory is our essential guide, but the mayor gave us the vision of the independent learner. Moore deepened this with the concepts of learner autonomy and transactional distance, giving us a framework of dialogue and structure. And Peters showed us how the field was shaped by the forces of industrialization. Together, these theories provide the foundation for all the practice we explore in this course. And finally, my references. Here are the key references for this presentation. Thank you for your time.